So today we are with John Richards again, and we are going to talk about how to recruit a tech co-founder. John Richards and myself love software startups, and the hardest part is him and I are both business people, and business people always approach us and say, how do I build the next Twitter, the next Facebook, the next LinkedIn, whatever it is, something for maybe nursing homes, who knows, some software package. How do I do that when I don't know how to code?
So my favorite type of business is definitely B2B SaaS. So let's talk about B2B SaaS companies.
Okay.
A classic B2B SaaS company is saying there's a business need, and 35% or more of the industry does it using paper and pencil, or 65% uses Excel spreadsheets, and there's no SaaS software for this function. So let's go into that business and provide that to businesses that need that. So we do a B2B SaaS. I'm a business guy. I've identified this. Now I need a tech co-founder. The number one question I get by far from entrepreneurs is, how do I find a tech co-founder? It's probably 3 times a day, 10 times a week, just in my little environment that I get that question. It's rampant. And finding a tech co-founder is a tricky thing. First of all, half of the great coders that have the chops to be able to be a tech co-founder won't be in a startup. Either their spouse or themselves or their life experience has led them to believe the risk is not worth it, and they want to be at a company that can pay them a great salary, give them great benefits.
The opportunity cost is also high. Like my highest friend that I know, he claims he gets paid $750,000 a year. And so he's just like, John, why would I ever do a startup?
Yeah.
He's like, it's like every year or two, it's the equivalent of building a startup and selling it from the probability scale.
Yeah, I mean, these large tech companies need that tech talent too, and they pay for it, and they've got the capital to do it. So it's really, really challenging for startups to find tech co-founders. And so this is a constant battle. It's probably the number one. In the good times of business, it's probably the number one thing that holds back startups in the software arena is finding a tech co-founder. Somebody who can get along with the business co-founder, someone who can actually write most of the minimum viable product or version 1.0 software and actually write the code themselves and get that out the door to get the first paying customers. That's a tall order. That's a very skilled, we business people call them rock star coders. They hate to be called that themselves though, so they're much more likely to call themselves 10x coders. And there's also an interesting phenomenon. There's a principle called the Mythical Man Month. And there's actually a name for this. I'm forgetting what it is, but there's a book called The Mythical Man Month, which is about that the more software engineers you put on a project, the slower it becomes. So you really have to be careful with having too many software engineers attacking a problem. So you don't want to just have a bunch of mediocre coders working on something. You want somebody at the beginning really strong and knows what they're doing. So this finding this tech co-founders becomes a huge problem. So what are the ways to go about doing this? Well, first of all, since about half of them take themselves out of it by never, ever entertaining the idea of going to a startup, you've already got a really shrunken pie to go after. And some of the things you have to do as a business founder is you have to be super aggressive. You have to turn over every rock. You have to be a Pied Piper and get people to believe in you and your vision. You have to be able to network like crazy and become a master networker. When you find a coder that has the skills in the areas you need, but they won't join you, you have to ask them, what friends are like you? Who do you have that you can introduce me to? And who would be the one that would love to get a founding stake in a great venture? And you just have to be aggressive. And it is effort. I'll tell you a quick story. There was a great company one time that lost their tech co-founder and had to find another one. And I had lined up a really incredible angel investor who was maybe even willing to come and be CEO with these founders and all this, but they could not find a tech co-founder, a new one. And it went on and on for weeks and then turned into months. And that angel investor and I sat down with these two co-founders and said, you've got to get a tech guy. What is going on here? And they said, we can't. We've tried everything. And I said, I don't believe you. You haven't tried everything. And matter of fact, here's the deal. If you don't find somebody within 72 hours from this moment. He is walking away and his money's leaving and his offer is leaving, and I'm never going to work with you again. And they go, what? That's not very nice. That's a terrible thing. No. You said you try. I believe you could go do this. You have to treat this as life or death. And they went out and in about 60 hours, with about 12 hours to spare, landed somebody. Okay. So this has been in my business career as a leader. This has happened a lot with salespeople too. Salespeople, I can't double sales for the next month over last month. Can't happen. Well, they can. It's all about motivation. Humans are amazing. If they're properly motivated, they can get them incredible things done. And this job of getting a tech co-founder, when somebody gets properly motivated, when their back is pressed against the wall and the only other option is complete and utter failure, they somehow find the tech co-founder. But they'll take a year getting there when they could have had that attitude in a week and found somebody much faster. And so, because they're out there in anything in business or in life, it's a numbers game. If you want to get 10 sales next month, you can't just make 10 sales calls. You need to make 100 sales calls, right? So if you only make 10 sales calls, you're going to get one sale. And, that's just how it is. And same with the tech co-founder. So some of the places, if you are looking at getting something done, I'm taking here in the Utah market where I'm at, every night of the week, there is some type of meeting or networking event where business and tech type people are meeting and having meetups. And then you would be frequenting those type of events, constantly looking and trying to find somebody.
When I think about recruiting a tech co-founder, I would approach it a lot like getting married, and no one would say, hey, I need a tech co-founder tomorrow, and no one's going to get married with you tomorrow, especially if the tech co-founder says, well, I'm providing all the value. You don't have sales and traction. So when I try to recruit tech co-founders in the past, I would always try to get a signed contract or like LOI the moment before trying to recruit a tech co-founder. And so this is how I would approach it. I would say, hey, here are 10 potential CTOs I'd love to work with. I like to keep them in the loop on like a monthly basis. In the meantime, most people can afford to get a product kind of like designed in wireframe.
Right.
And if you do the Rob Wall, he talks about, the mom checklist.
Yeah.
I can go and I can find a way to close a deal. And if I can close a deal, I can prove to a potential CTO that I'm worth my weight and not just a business person who wants everyone to do the work for them.
Right. And those are all great. So traction, so innovation traction and financial traction, the more you have of that, just like that gets you to recruit an investor easier, it helps you with a tech co-founder. There's no doubt about that. So there's lots of things you can accomplish.
Because if I was a CTO of a company, I think I would be put off if everyone says, hey, I want you to join me, but you had zero traction.
Yeah, and it depends, everything again is a little bit circumstance, right? If this is somebody and you can sit down with them and spend hours and share your vision and they trust you and you have a relationship of trust already, that's different, than somebody that has told you, oh, there's this great person. They know the languages and the platform that you need to do this type of thing. This is the perfect person. I'll introduce you, but you've got to close them and see if you can get them to be your tech co-founder. And they're already employed at a $12,000 a month job. Then that's going to be a different situation, right? You're going to have to walk in and have as many arrows in your quiver as possible for that one and the items that you're talking about on traction. Exactly.
When recruiting a tech co-founder, how do you train people to vet the tech co-founder?
That I learned long ago. I had to have in my life people that could call baloney on what tech people claim they have in terms of skills and knowledge. Good or bad, a lot of tech people will overrepresent their skills and knowledge. You interview them, talk to them, and they say, oh, yeah, I'm an expert in Ruby on Rails or Python or React or Angular or whatever it's been over the years. And then they're reading, React for Dummies that night to even know what it is, right? And so I've got people in my life that are PhDs in computer science that will meet for 20 minutes with somebody that I send to them and make them write procedures up on a whiteboard and see if they really know what they're talking about. And then they give me thumbs up or thumbs down. And that's the only way I can.
Is that Steve Little?
That's Steve Little does it for me here in Utah.
We'll put his photo here.
Dr. Little, yeah. And I don't know if he'll do it for other people, but he's done it for me. And that's the only way, because I have no idea whether they really are what they say they are or as good as they are. I mean, there's times where he's done that and he says, no, John, they're not that good. One time he said, this is the best guy I've ever seen in Utah. And we gave that guy 8% of the company.
Okay.
And he was like the third or fourth coder to join.
Okay.
He was that good.
There's also other services like maybe Carrot. I don't know what the price is. I assume it'd be like $1,000 for an interview. You could run them through and have a series of legitimate coders.
Yeah.
vet the person.
Yeah. And, when it gets tough to find a tech co-founder, what I don't like, if I can tell you what I don't like, I see entrepreneurs do, they will go and settle for an individual who won't quit their job and will, in the evenings, do some work for them. This is a very common scenario. I'll have an entrepreneur go, John, I finally found my tech co-founder. And now we're going to work together a little, and they're going to get me to my MVP, and they can put in 2 to 4 hours a night for me. They got their own job. Almost invariably, about 2 to 4 weeks into it, after the honeymoon phase is over, that prospective tech co-founder comes back to the business person who's all in and putting all their time into their company and tells them, oh, I got increased workload at work and I can't work on this anymore. And then they have to start over. It usually takes about 4 to 6 weeks for that to happen. And this is really interesting. It's repeated all the time. I've seen people go through 3, 4, 5 people in 6 months time period doing that type of thing. And the next guy never wants to use any of the code base that the previous guy worked on. So that's a problem. I like what you said earlier. If you couldn't find a tech co-founder, getting to an MVP or a wireframe or something where it shows some traction, where you could maybe go out and get a contract or get expressed interest, and maybe you even use solutions like offshore coding, a team, or even a solution of a student team, or you go to a coding boot camp and they've got students that want to work on a project. Anything you can do to get to the next level, that can be good. One of the cautionary notes there is make sure it's being done in a technology that possibly could be preserved when you get your full inside team, right? That you can build on top of that and don't have to throw all the code away. The amount of code written and thrown away to false starts is astronomical.
But isn't that just part of the process?
It's
part of the dating process. I mean, think about dating in general.
Yeah.
Think about how many dates you go on until you find someone that you really mesh with.
Now, this takes us back to lean startup principles, though, and the real thing that should be happening here, and if we want to back up and before I'm even looking for a tech co-founder or hiring any type of team to build my software or write even one line of code, I should go through full lean startup and make sure that I've validated product market fit and a business model so that I'm not writing code or a hypothesized business model that has no proof that it's a real business model. That's also another form of waste in this realm that we have to avoid, because writing code without knowing that you've got some semblance of product market fit and a business model where you can create, capture, and deliver value in the marketplace is going to be a form of waste that wastes the founder's most precious commodity, which is their time. Wasting 6 months writing code for a business model that any competent advisor could have told you was dead on arrival is a form of waste.
Definitely. That's a topic for another time.
Yeah, it is.
So as far as recruiting a tech co-founder, you're talking about finding ways to prove traction, whether you create a wireframe, an actual design, try to get letters of intent, potential contract. I remember at one point in my life, we literally got checks and everyone's like, but we don't have a product. And I said, the worst case scenario is we just return the check.
Well, John, you're a leader in this realm as well. And I would encourage you and others to really kind of combine the ability of having a contract team build product, combining that though with some of those lean startup validation practices in one. I call that kind of blueprinting. Before you build a building, you have to have blueprints, right? So before we build a product, let's blueprint. You could go to somebody that has a contracted team that could build stuff, but maybe they build you the wireframe based, and you come with, as the business person, with business model figured out from validation efforts. Then you know what the MVP needs to look like. Then they wireframe the product, and now you're putting something together where you can start attracting maybe a real, true CTO co-founder.
The other thing you could also do is, you've heard of the no-code movement, right?
I'm not so sure if I'm super familiar with it.
So there's applications out there like Bubble, for example.
Yeah, okay.
Where you could build the basic functionality of something like Twitter. Now, it gets tough if you're doing things that are not mainstream.
Yeah.
But you could create a fully functioning working prototype with maybe you and a designer and never have a tech person involved. And then you could potentially get to $5,000-$10,000 a month in revenue, and then use that traction to attract.
Those have been around for 20, 30 years of platforms that, it's just, what you see is what you get, drag and drop, that actually automatically builds the code underneath and runs on a certain platform. And I've seen those and I've heard of those. But all of my experience in those is that you very quickly, if a company truly has traction, as a business model, if a business model really is going to go somewhere, you quickly get to where where you still, in a very accelerated way, need to find an in-house CTO, co-founder.
Yeah,
really
definitely.
tough. Yeah.
Like
So there is ways to get around that and do that, but I think all of those tend to be punting the issue of, like, for instance, I'll just say this. I draw this chart out for entrepreneurs all the time. There's two parallel tracks going on here. While you're doing your business model validation and designing an MVP and working with a contracted team to get an MVP, wireframe MVP, maybe even version 1.0, you need to be on a parallel track as a business person to find your in-house co-founder or quasi-co-founder CTO to come in-house for when you can catch the wave up. As you tick up into the exponential curve of growth, you're obviously going to need that. But what happens is a lot of founders find it so hard to find tech co-founder, they just don't do anything and they go down that other path, and all of a sudden they find out, wow, I'm getting traction, things are getting exciting, and they don't realize, but it's going to take 3 to 6 months to land somebody in-house. And if they would have been doing that in parallel.
Always be finding when you're looking for a tech co-founder, and always assume your tech co-founder won't be there tomorrow.
Very good words.
What about recruiting like a tech co-founder and his tech friend, like their best friend? You seen that work?
I've seen my college roommate, my best friend, recruited all sorts of C-level positions in a company, whether it's CTO, CMO, whatever they like to, we shouldn't be using those titles in a startup anyway, but almost invariably all of them have blown up in their faces.
Let's say you've got a friend who's a developer at Google, maybe not Google because they're too enterprise, but like a legitimate tech company, and him and his friend are looking to join. Does that increase the success rate? Or does instead of recruiting like a CTO, just bringing on 2 developers, does that hold them more accountable?
I'm not sure if I understand. You're saying bring in, instead of a true co-founder tech CTO type, just 2 coders?
Bring 2 of them, bring in 2 coders.
Depends on, is the business, the main, as I call it, a primary founder, the primary founder, do they have the competence?
Let's say they're both CTO competency, or maybe one's more back end and one's more front end.
But does the business CEO, co-founder or founder, do they have the competence to manage those 2 that are on even keel for a while? That's the question. Because if they're not going to have one being superior to the other in the organization, I see problems there. If the CEO is weak in managing tech, again, it's situationally specific because you have to know the competency of that CEO. If the CEO couldn't manage a tech situation at all, then that's going to be a problem. Now, if the CEO is really strong in tech and strong enough to manage coders and technical people, then that would work.
Okay. Awesome.
That's how I see it.
What other points should we talk about for recruiting a tech co-founder?
Again, just compensation, be realistic. There's some people that have a dream that they can find a 10x coder, somebody who's really quality enough to by themselves write, MVP or version 1.0 of a product, and that they can get them for 0 salary and, 8% equity in a company. Okay. That just doesn't happen. That's a pipe dream. If they talked a naive 10x coder into that, within a month or 2, that'll blow up in all of their faces. It's got to be a healthy chunk of equity and for it to work, or there's got to be good salary compensation, because the market rate for a true 10x coder, especially if you're in like Utah, which is a Silicon Slopes, a Silicon Valley type environment, the compensation, that person could go out and make a great living anywhere and has their choice of what they want to do. And it's no small choice to say, I'm going to join a startup. And so the levers of salary and equity percentages have to be understood, and you shouldn't be living in a dreamland.
Okay. Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time. Make sure you, if you're on YouTube, that you like or comment below for what you'd like to learn more about. Also, if you're listening to us on like Spotify or iTunes, give us a 6-star rating. So we'd appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me, and continue to do the great work you're doing, John.
All right. Thanks. Talk to you later.
Bye.